Good evening, folks, and a very warm welcome to you. Shout out to everyone tuning in from Tallahassee and all my people across the country. My name is Freeman Doyle, and yes, we are live. This network is growing fast, and we're tackling the conversations that too often get ignored. As Black people, we don't talk enough about why we're last in economics, first to be incarcerated, why we rank lowest in home and land ownership, why our health outcomes are the worst, why so many of our women are unmarried, our men unavailable, and why the Black family structure is hanging by a thread. Now, we won't unpack it all tonight, but this is what the show is about, and we're starting that journey right after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, I got a little announcement to make. Thanks to you, your views, your shares, your belief in what we're doing, we're growing. We're not just a local voice anymore. We're global. And with that growth, it's time for a new name and a new chapter. Black News International Television is born. Same real talk, same sharp truth. But now, we're bringing our stories to the world. Real news, fake people, real power. And this is just the beginning. Welcome to Black News International Television. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome back. Our first topic today is arguably the most important because everything begins and ends with the family unit. Since the end of segregation, the Black family has slowly disintegrated, not into new forms of unity, but into collections of individuals who just happen to share a last name. And in many cases, that name belongs to the mother. We often hear statistics used to critique single mothers, pointing out that the majority of incarcerated Black men come from homes led by women. But that's only half the truth. What those numbers leave out is the other half of the failure, the missing father. Raising a child is a dual responsibility. You can't leave a mother alone and expect her to raise sons into men or daughters into wives without support. When one parent disappears and the other is overwhelmed, both have failed the child, and the child carries that burden forward. So, how do we fix this? We start by telling our daughters early on that family, not a degree, not a business, not beauty or body, is the foundation of our survival. That means nearly total sacrifice of individual ego for the collective good of the family. If you haven't done that, whether you're a boomer, Gen Xer, or millennial, then you failed the Black community. You failed your family. There's no polite way to say a hard truth. If you don't believe how dire our circumstances are, then don't take my word for it. Listen to us. Just hear this.
In spite of the enormous pressure put on the Black family in the 1960s from economics and racism, the Black family remained intact. The father figure was a strong figure. Though not perfect, he was present. However, there had already been set in motion a process which would disrupt this emerging family structure: land dispossession. Across the South and into urban centers, Black landowners were systematically stripped of property through legal loopholes, predatory zoning laws, heirs' property exploitation, and outright intimidation. These were not isolated incidents. They were part of a coordinated strategy to destabilize economic foundations and scatter generational wealth. This land wasn't just soil. It was home, business, security, legacy. And once it was gone, so too was the anchor that kept many Black families self-sufficient and rooted. Without land, there was no collateral for loans, no base for businesses, and no inheritance to pass on. Families were pushed into renter status, into public housing projects, and into dependence on systems that were never designed to sustain them. And right as this economic destabilization took hold, policy followed. Welfare programs of the late 60s and 70s, while framed as relief, often punished households for having two parents. A man in the house meant no benefits. The safety net came with a catch. Trade the father for food, the husband for housing. This wasn't by accident. It was by design. A slow dismantling of the most essential unit of any community, the family.
So, as if losing land which is the basis for independence, then the incentivization of our women to drop her male counterpart wasn't enough. The government launched a campaign that would all but wipe out 2 generations of black people. The prison industrial complex. This wasn't about crime. This was about control. They didn't flood our communities with jobs or investment. No, they flooded them with crack cocaine. And then came the laws, mandatory minimums, 3 strikes policies, and sentencing disparities so wide that possessing the powdered form of cocaine got you probation, while crack got you decades. And who used crack? The poor. Who used powder? The wealthy. In the 1980s and 90s, entire neighborhoods were raided and gutted. Fathers, brothers, sons, snatched out of households and warehoused in prisons. Nonviolent offenses became life sentences. Rehabilitation wasn't even part of the conversation. Meanwhile, privatized prisons boomed. States guaranteed a minimum number of filled beds. That's right, they signed contracts promising human inventory.
Starting in the 1980s, federal drug policy turned into a full-scale siege. Crack was introduced into black neighborhoods. Coincidentally, right as jobs were disappearing, social programs were slashed, and schools were underfunded. But instead of investing in treatment or opportunity, they militarized the police. SWAT raids became normal. Whole apartment buildings torn apart. Helicopters circling projects. Kids walking to school past yellow tape and bullet casings. And while drug use was rising in all communities, the enforcement was not. White users got rehab. Black users got prison time. By the 1990s, the U.S. had the highest incarceration rate in the world, and we still do. A black man had a 1 in 3 chance of ending up behind bars in his lifetime. Not because he was more criminal, but because the system was designed to catch him.
The consensus is A, we must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons.
Now enter the business of prison. Private prison companies secured contracts with occupancy guarantees, some as high as 90%. That meant even if the cells were empty, states still had to pay. So the pressure to fill them never stopped. And when states tried to break ties with private prison companies, those companies took them to court to keep the money flowing. This wasn't just policy. This was infrastructure. Built brick by brick, law by law, raid by raid. And its echoes are still with us today.
And once inside, they worked for pennies on the dollar, making uniforms, office furniture, even military gear, a new kind of plantation, just legalized. But the most devastating impact wasn't inside those walls. It was outside, on the families left behind. Kids raised without their fathers. Women forced into both parental roles. Boys growing up without examples of manhood. And daughters learning that stability came with conditions. Not love, not partnership, but survival.
When the father's role is stripped away, the whole house feels it. The boy who struggles with his lessons isn't just fighting math. He's fighting the silence of no one to show him the way. The mother sitting in the principal's office shoulders battles meant to be shared. Outside the window, boys chase the image of manhood in gold chains and fast cars because real manhood left too many homes empty. Grandmothers fold clothes and raise second generations, filling shoes they were never meant to wear alone. Daughters seek love without a father's protection and pay a heavy price too soon. And sons, still barely boys, get ushered into cages with no steady hands to pull them back. This is not nature. This is the wound left when fathers are broken away from families, and families are left to break under the weight.
Now, I could talk about this all day, but I want to hear what you have to say. When we come back, I'll be taking your calls, and we're going to speak on these issues like family. Stay with us. We'll be right back.